In this topic, we're going to talk about what are the truths about childbirth. Is everything just opinions? Is it just so much an individual experience that there's nothing that we share in common? It's certainly become more oppositional since I gave birth in 1970. In the 12 years between my first birth and last birth, suddenly this oppositional approach just exploded. Medical versus natural, home birth versus hospital, midwife versus doctor, and on and on and on and on. So let's talk about some of these things. Every pregnancy and birth is definitely unique, even when a woman's having her 10th child. And in fact, throughout history, it's basically been about the individual pregnancy, the individual birth. The way it's been collective has been within society. In other words, if you're with one group of people compared to another group of people, their ways of handling pregnancy and birth in the early newborn period will be culturally distinct. Since the 1980s, certainly in the United States and other developed countries, the stress on the individual has increased through birth plans. It's your choice, informed consent. Everything is about our individual. That's been the goal, our personal freedoms. And yet, in reality, pregnancy and childbirth have been one of the great collective, universal human experiences. Along with death, you can't get any more universal. If you're not pregnant, you're not in a group of pregnant women. And once you're in that group, the only way out of pregnancy is some form of birth. Whether it's a miscarriage, termination, a cesarean, whether the birth was a good experience or horrible, whether the outcome was good or terrible, whether we recovered or continued to suffer throughout life, it's universal. 100% of pregnant women are going to give birth. And curious, that's what made the concept so easy to develop, because giving birth, it's a very weak verb. We do the activity of birthing. It's a time-based activity. It starts at X time and it ends once the baby is out of our body. How long that time frame is variable, but that's what it is. It is an activity that we do throughout that time. And within the concept of being skilled, we fill that time with skills. The more skills we have, the wider range, the greater depth of those skills, the more we will adjust and adapt those skills to be sustainable throughout the activity of doing the birth. As we look at the universal truths around pregnancy and childbirth, we need to understand that we're always, in some ways, dealing with three systems: traditional healthcare, natural wellness models, which are contemporary, often coming from some traditional systems, and modern healthcare. Each of you is an ICPA member working with individual expectant families. By giving them the concept, you are helping them to bridge this gap between themselves individually and the fact that they have now moved into the universal. Can you see how that one truth can help your clients? And what is the truth about what every pregnant woman wants? Well, primarily, all pregnant women want a safe birth. They want to be alive at the end of that birth, and they want their baby to be alive. Curiously, being alive doesn't mean that there isn't long-lasting injury. But being alive is the primary goal of traditional cultures, the natural wellness model, the natural birth model, and the medical model. Everybody wants a live mother and a live baby at the end of that. The second thing that women want, and how do I know that? I've spent 50 years talking to thousands and thousands and thousands of women worldwide. And what they want is to feel in control. And that goes back to what we have talked about in previous topics and what we'll keep reiterating. There are always two elements to every birth: risks that might become problems. Thankfully, most problems resolve themselves naturally or with assistance, and very, very few tragedies. The larger issue for women is that they suffered. and they would like to feel in control. Because there's no way to know how any birth will unfold, then actually every pregnant woman who is doing the activity of birthing is doing it on a moment-to-moment basis with no understanding of the next moment or when it will end. And that is why the concept becomes so increasingly more powerful, because you can imagine the same woman and two paths in front of her, just trusting it or becoming skilled. Perhaps they have identical births. Perhaps the woman who just trusted the birth will instinctively develop skills or just allow the birth to happen without using any skills, trusting it moment to moment, having it happen to her moment to moment, without knowing when it will end, without knowing what is going to happen in the next moment. Or that same woman could have skills in which she uses her conscious mind to respond to everything that she feels internally and everything that is happening to or around her. Which woman would you like to be? For myself, it was the latter. And for all of Birthing Better Families, it was the latter. Because many, 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 many of us knew what it felt like to be the former, to just have birth happen to us. And to tell you the truth, most of us didn't like it. What are some other truths about birth? Well, it's a one-off experience. You can't replay it the next day. You get one shot at it, either with skills or without them. Either trusting that trust is sufficient, or trusting that your capability as a skilled woman, and hopefully with a skilled partner, is what you can rely on. Birth is infrequent. Even when I've worked with people having 20 children, we eat more than that. We have sex more than that. We go to the bathroom more than that. And most of us, now that there's birth control, are having 2 to 3 children. And what else is true of this one-off and frequent experience? Each one's unique. It unravels moment by moment. And birth is big, big, life transforming, no matter how it unfolds, no matter any element that happened to or around that birth of the circumstances. It's big, and the memories of each birth lasts a lifetime. So what are more truths about birth? At every moment of the activity of birthing, a woman will breathe in and out. Does it matter? Lamaze and Bradley thought it did. They developed breathing skills. Birthing Better Families thought it did. Hypnobirthing is based on breathing skills. So there is an acknowledgement that how a woman breathes in her birth can alter how she's doing the activity, or feels about it, or thinks about it, or how other people hear her or see her, and how she behaves or what she is doing. What's another truth? At every moment of the activity of birthing a baby, a woman is in some position or posture. Even though positions were focused on as the natural birth movement grew in the 70s, posture, the upper part of the body, really wasn't focused on. Birthing Better Families have focused on both, because both of them impact how easily a baby opens up the woman's container and can move down, through, and out it. Right now, the viewpoint about positions is to stay in a gravity plus position, standing, walking, sitting on a ball. However, what Birthing Better Families did was to focus on how each position opened or closed them. And curiously, being on the hands and knees is considered to be upright because your thighs are upright, but your body is lying on its stomach, and that alters how your baby is moving into and through your bony pelvis. At every moment of the activity of birthing, a woman has the capacity to think, to feel, and to communicate within herself. One of the little big skills in birthing better is called the positive and negative voice. Because Grantley Dick Reed, Childbirth Without Fear, talked about women reducing fear of birth. Birthing better families realized that not liking birth or being anxious or fearful about it wasn't something we could always control. So we used the different parts of our brain to apply the skills we had learned. So in my birth in 1982, I've never liked labor. It hurts. And I found myself using that skill all the time as my brain was going F, 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 F when I was having painful contractions. I could employ how to stay open, how to position my pelvis, how to breathe. And I will reiterate again in a number of these topics about risks. Before pregnancy, women can have many, many risks. Financial, physical, environmental, psychological, situational, and those risks can change in pregnancy. What's added to pregnancy is the baby. And in birth, the risks change again, as well as afterwards in that short period after the birth. And risks rarely become problems to the extent that the problem becomes a tragedy. But the reason that the medical profession uses assessments, monitoring, and procedures is to identify the problems and to monitor them so that they can be dealt with prior to a tragedy. The natural birth movement more likely will assume there are no problems and just allow birth to unfold in a physiological manner. Neither are right or wrong. And how do traditional people deal with risks? They often can't identify them, but they have traditional health and wellness, and they have lots of things that pregnant women should and shouldn't do. So they're trying their best through behaviors to reduce the potential risks from becoming tragedies. So other universal is coping or not coping. There's a wide range between coping to suffering, and that's true for whether there's a short labor or a long one, or even a surgical one. Women who have labors that are under 3 hours are the ones more likely to feel that they're going to die in birth because the contractions come so closely together and are so intense. Women who have very long labors often feel they're never ever going to end. But long labors don't necessarily mean that women feel they're suffering. They're just exhausting. And in surgical births, women are having a profound experience to their body. And so we can cope through that experience or manage or deal with, handle, work through, stay on top of, and feel in control. And you can add any other phrase that you want. In this universal experience of the activity of birthing our baby, on a moment-to-moment basis, we can think it's no fuss, love it or hate it. That's how dynamic it is. And that's why it's such a big experience. We can recover well from it or be left with lifelong problems. Those lifelong problems are still the taboo of today. We don't hear about them much. But they were also the foundation for the development of both the concept and birthing better skills. How could we reduce or prevent those problems from lingering after the birth by what we did in pregnancy to prepare for birth and how we coped and managed during the birth? And within this universalness of this experience, birth will either unfold as we planned or hoped or wanted, or it just happens and it's like nothing we expected. I know that there has been lots of talk, not in the 70s when the cesarean rate was 5%, not even in the 80s when it had almost tripled, but by the end of the 80s, you began to hear women say to one another, if you had a cesarean, that really isn't a birth. We've also heard women say this about their own children. She was my cesarean birth. He was my home birth. From Birthing Better viewpoint, from the concept, we don't look at it that way. As Birthing Better families, absolutely know, believe, and experience that the birth of our baby is important to us. Therefore, we used the concept in a deeply and profound manner. We became skilled so that we could work through the activity of birthing our baby, no matter where we birthed, no matter who was present, no matter our circumstances, no matter our beliefs, our choices, our lack of choices, the change of choices, and no matter what happened to or around us as we did the activity of birthing our baby. We used skills because we were using the skills of doing the activity of birthing our baby in our role as being a mother and father. So let me ask you this question. How do you feel about doing any activity in life? Do you feel better when you feel skilled to do any task at hand? If you have children, do you notice how important it is for them to continue to make efforts to become more skilled at the task? And ask yourself this question. When you're doing a task with another person, is there a difference between working with another appropriately skilled person or not? If you've ever moved big furniture in and out of doors with another person, have you appreciated it when the other person is skilled or when you're skilled? Without a doubt, there are many innate activities in life. What are the ones you know about? Being horny, randy, hungry, walking, talking, peeing and pooing. There are lots of innate activities, and labor and vaginal delivery are one of them. If you know nothing, we would be pregnant, and then at some point we would labor and have a vaginal delivery. It would happen to us. No matter the circumstances, no matter any other factor. Many of those innate activities are surrounded by skills. Think about the children you have and being hungry. Let's think about being someplace where you see 4 trees in front of you. You have a white, yellow, green, and red berry on one on each tree. And your child is hungry. Do you just point to the 4 trees and say, go eat any of them? No. If all 4 of them are poisonous, you'd tell them stay away from them. If all 4 you knew were safe, yes. If you didn't know, you probably would not want them to test it out until someone told you. And we know if we have children that we spend too much time taking things out of their mouths. Do we instinctively know where to pee and poo? No. We have to learn in every culture. Do we innately know how to cook? No, most of us don't. We have to learn. How many skills did it take you, and how sensitive do you have to be a good lover? And learning a language, is that innate? Well, no, it isn't. We have to learn it even as a child. But as a child, we spend a long period of time listening because we can't speak or articulate words for a long time. And what about polite speech? I can remember talking to a young woman when her mother taught her to say please and thank you. She would often go, please, or thank you. And her mother would say to her, don't talk to me in that tone of voice. And the woman said to me, she would have changed, but she didn't know what the word tona meant. So we know that polite speech is also a skill people need to learn. And we need to learn birth and coaching skills. In birth, in modern cultures, there are 3 roles, and each role has skills for that role, that job, and those tasks. So an obstetrician has their skills. A midwife, particularly, let's say a New Zealand midwife who's a direct entry midwife who doesn't consider herself medical. A doula, a childbirth educator. They all have skills for their job, their task. They may not overlap. ICPA chiropractors may go to births, but they're going as a second-tier birth care provider, not usually the primary care provider. And that's one role. Another role is the birthing woman. And the other role, if we're lucky, is to have someone who knows us and loves us, who's our coach. Those three roles and jobs and tasks can intermingle, but they often don't share the same set of skills. What we did in the early 70s, particularly when we developed the concept and started to develop birthing better skills, was a huge need to improve from the Lamaze and the Bradley and Grantley Dick Reed skills. They were the first ever, so we should never believe that they had to be extensive. We were just lucky we had them. It was the first time in history that there was any concept that birthing women and their partners could use skills in their two roles of giving birth and coaching. So Birthing Better Families, when we developed the concept, when we developed the Birthing Better skills over a 30-year period, was because we wanted to have a wide range of skills and to include everyone and every circumstance. Often, we were developing skills to answer two questions: what if and what about? So how do skills fit into all births? Well, we have to go back to the truths. The only way out of pregnancy is to give birth, one way or another, no matter the type or circumstances. And it's an activity, and that activity continues until the baby is born, no matter the circumstances. And the skills work because at every moment of that activity, the woman will breathe in and out. And every moment, her body's in some posture or position. And at every moment of birth, the woman has the capacity to think, feel, and communicate with herself and to use choice in her mind to use skills, which one and how and for how long. In the 80s, the belief was that women should get out of their critical thinking brain and into their primal brain and just let birth happen to them. Birthing Better Families never, ever were on that track. We always worked through the activity as it was unfolding. Is that controlling the birth? No, it is responding on a moment-to-moment basis on what's happening inside us and to and around us, outside us. So when we tie these things together, every woman can learn and use skills at her birth. Why not? And those skills don't have to be used perfectly. Almost all of us who have used skills at one birth will heighten our use of those skills at a subsequent birth. Let's say you see a video on YouTube of a woman who's got her eyes closed and she looks so serene and peaceful while she's laboring. And you're thinking, there, you see? That's instinctive and natural, and she's just going with the flow. After the birth, often they will say, this time I focused on my breathing. This time I relaxed more deeply. That is the language of using skills. Another example, if you had a niggling labor and found yourself exhausted when labor actually became progressive, often women will say in the subsequent pregnancy, I'm not going to get into my labor as quickly. I'm going to go about my business and wait until it really picks up. That is choice using skills. Do skills enhance instinct or innate intelligence? Of course they do. I've always used an analogy of driving a car that's driven people in the natural birth movement crazy because they say that's not natural or physiological. But it's a wonderful analogy because we learn diverse skills to be able to drive a car. Steering a wheel is not the same as putting your foot on the accelerator or even putting your foot on the brake or using the turn signals or looking in your rear mirror or your side mirror or knowing how to corner or parallel park or drive for an extended period of time. We have to learn discrete, separate skills to drive a car and then put them together sufficiently well enough so that we can go down the road at 60 miles an hour with other cars going 60 miles an hour 3 feet away from us without constantly having an accident. So driving a car is from place to place and birth is from time to time. We can learn diverse skills that we put together at every moment of our birth to do the activity. And here's part of the great truths. We are all one humanity. We can use distorted mind beliefs to see them versus us. But any man can impregnate any woman, and any child can be brought up in any culture, any religion, any language, on any part of the earth where people live. We know that we are all born naked. We know we are all born equal because the sun shines on each of us. We know that we live on one planet, that we share with each other, all species, and the water and the air and the soil. We know that humans have a cortical mind, as do whales and dolphins and chimpanzees and gorillas, and that within our mind we think and can make choices and learn skills. So now is the time on our one planet with our one humanity for ICPA to lead the world and be the tipping point and the 100th monkey for this new revitalized childbirth trend, that we should just become skilled when we're pregnant and use those skills to work through the activity of birthing our baby. And by doing that, within the salutogenesis model of each person having resources that help them to work through the stressors of life, we build families, because both mothers and fathers and the others with us become skilled. And that is what Birthing Better Families called the continuity of skilled self. For us, as Birthing Better and Common Knowledge Trust, it's because fathers developed 10 skills to use in the 5 phases of pregnancy, from conception through birth, because we're still pregnant until our baby is born, and skills to prepare our body for birth from 24 weeks, and the skills to work through the activity of birth as it unfolds. So we developed a continuity of skilled self. That concept that you're telling your clients and the handout you're giving them is working to grow a skilled birthing population that feels that they have a continuity of skilled self in their own pregnancy and birth. The great truths will always exist, and our individuality exists within them. So now, let's work to use these truths